the Hessian soldiers were hired. Basically, the British hired them to fight the fight.
It's terrifying. They were like beasts, like mountain country men with guns. Basically,
They were.
That's phenomenal and that's fascinating.
So welcome back to Chumming with the Spirits. My name's Larry. We got OG and JD, J-Dog, with us tonight.
J-Dog.
Who are always with us because this is our podcast, so I don't know why I said that. Yeah. I'm drinking some chocolate toffee whiskey. These guys got more drinks than I do. Whiskey and beer.
Oh, well, actually, I've already had a Fireball and something else. Oh, a peach.
It's in the past.
That isn't past. But I'm sipping on tea now because last time it took me, from the last podcast, if you guys watch it, it took me 3 days to recover. And I want to try to save my kidneys and liver. So this
overrated.
He'll be sipping on some peach pretty soon.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
I'm sure as my tea's done, I'll be drinking some of this delicious Busch Light Peach. And is it a girl beer? I don't know, but
I don't think so. I think it's amazing.
I think it's delicious as far as beers are concerned.
I'm sipping on some Sazerac Rye, one of my favorites now.
What's in your...
It's a bullet.
It's a 308
Shot glass.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's a shot glass.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then, of course, Keystone Light and whatever else is in the fridge. Some of those pineapple vodka was pretty good. You know.
We do need to clean out that fridge.
I'm trying.
I've bought new stuff for us in the pantry. As soon as we get that cleaned out, we can go.
We're always looking for alcohol sponsors.
Yeah.
Mixed drinks with history for suggestions.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. It is chumming with the spirits.
It is. It is. I know.
We imbibe to relax us and make it easier to talk.
Go Yotes.
Go Yotes.
Go Yotes. My favorite D1 AA team with Missouri State as well. Whoa.
Email.
By the way, South Dakota did beat the crap out of your Wildcats.
Fuck you.
And we got our asses kicked. All right.
Anyways.
By a D1 AA team. Okay.
So we wanted to kind of talk this week about a specific topic, not personal experiences or anything that we've had, but something that's fascinated us, the subject of the Headless Horseman. And yes, I know when I say that, a lot of people are going to think directly to is it Washington Irving?
Yep.
Story
That's correct,
about Sleepy Hollow, but...
Or Brothers Grimm.
I've never seen that.
They did a version of it in their book as well.
Oh, you're talking about the book?
Yeah.
I was talking about the movie.
No.
I've never seen the movie, so...
Evidently, you didn't read the book either.
No. So, we're not going to be just talking about that one specific citation of the Headless Horseman, but the Headless Horseman phenomenon throughout history and the continents, because it goes much deeper than that specific story states, which I find kind of interesting, that this phenomenon is mainly in Europe. I mean, America, which we'll get to later, America has some folklore not associated with the Washington Irving story about the Headless Horseman, but the first one I kind of wanted to get into was Irish folklore of the Headless Horseman, which is typically called the Dullahan, Dullaahan, Ahan. Jesus, I can't
He
spell.
has nothing to do with that.
I didn't catch that one.
The Irish or the Dulan name?
Dulan.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're clear with that.
And this entity is usually described as like a demonic fairy. As we know, fairies and fae are very huge in Irish folklore, but it's usually an entity riding a horse,
A headless
carrying
horse.
not a headless horse, but
No, it's actually a headless horse. The Dulan is known for a headless horse with a headless rider.
well, that's
As
one
well.
variation of it.
I was just laughing at the fact that he said a huge fairy. Sorry.
What?
You said that. Well,
They're known as a dark omen, like a banshee.
Oh,
and
Yeah, and a lot of people
Still your eyes.
from that train of thought, from that ethos from mythology, credit it to being the spirit of Chrome Dubh, D-U-B-H. I think I'm saying that right. If I'm not saying that right, I apologize.
We'll get roasted if you're not saying that.
or,
right.
or smoke one.
Who was a Celtic god worshipped in Ireland during the rise of Christianity during the 6th century. So,
Beheadings were very popular back then.
yes, they were. And I found it interesting that this myth from Ireland doesn't necessarily lend towards just a headless horse rider, but they also have a variation of the entity that drives it's a horseless carriage, a headless
But that
person.
they can team up and have multiple horses.
Yeah.
Could be female or male.
Built by body parts, right?
Yeah.
The
The
Skull
wheels or
wheels and
legs.
all that, yeah.
Yeah.
Flaming skulls.
And
Which is a drink.
The Irish flaming skull.
Oh, no, just the
really a
flavors.
drink?
Yeah, my wife, yeah.
oh,
She
that's
that.
awesome.
It was,
I didn't know
and
that.
the skull.
Why are we
and
just
the
now
skull.
finding about this?
We should be having that, right?
Yeah, it's flaming.
Well, I wanted to have Irish coffee tonight, but I did not get a chance to go out and get some Jameson.
Well, we got like 17 other whiskeys.
I'm sure one of them.
I do have proper 12.
Yes, you do.
But Conor McGregor. That probably
you
that
are.
came out really bad. But sorry, Connor. You're still my boy.
So-
you know, in 2 years.
I wanted to read you guys a little clip that I researched and found that kind of described what the Doulahan appeared as, and it's kind of terrifying. And I wanted to get your guys' kind of thoughts on the interpretation of that. It says that his mouth is usually full of razor sharp teeth, forming a grin from each side, all the way to each side of his head, with massive eyes constantly staring about, and his flesh smells horrid with the color and consistency of moldy
I thought he was
cheese.
headless.
Well, he's probably carrying it, right?
It is.
Yeah.
That's noted. That
I was
sometimes.
like, what, are you trying to throw me a loophole here?
I'm just saying,
I don't
you're
understand.
describing the head of a headless horseman. I'm like, maybe you should put it in context where his head is usually in a bag or under his arm.
Yes.
Or
Or a
off the
pouch on the
pommel.
horse
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that.
But it's a very evil-looking head face.
Very-
Like,
It reminds me of the Christopher Walken movie with Johnny Depp and Christopher Walken. You know, with the razor teeth.
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
you can tell that they definitely took some.
That's
homage from
fantastic. I didn't know that until just now.
Well, and there's an excerpt here that I wanted to read later on when we get into American and German folklore about some of the things that are associated with their culture's interpretation of this that are almost like spot on of how the Sleepy Hollow interpretation in the movie with Johnny Depp are. And I was like, well, that's like, I always wondered why that was in the movie, because that was weird, but now it makes sense to me, which is fascinating.
Once you did research.
Yeah, once you do the research. Once you read
Yeah.
REED.
I'll be honest. I didn't realize how the headless rider is very common through all of Europe, not just Ireland, England, Scotland.
Yeah, I
Germany,
mean, it goes all the
Japan
way
even has them.
from Welsh to Polish to German to Celtic, America,
Scotland.
obviously, because we're just the bastards of all those.
Offsprings.
Yeah. Same thing.
I love that.
One's claimed, one's not.
Let's claim plus
One's
one.
redheaded.
I did read here that and it was called the Death Coach, by the way, that he rode around in.
Awesome.
And that entity was often called the Coiste Bodar. I think I'm saying that wrong, but who knows?
Yeah,
But yeah, it was.
Yeah, some passion in
the
it.
axles were made from human spines,
Right,
and
yeah.
the wheel
No.
spokes were thigh bones, and
the wheels.
Yeah, the wheels were thigh bones.
Yeah.
His whip was a human spine.
human spine. But the axles of the actual carriage were also made from human spines, according to my research. Who knows if that research is right or wrong? I got it off the internet,
Oh,
so it has to be
So,
correct.
Jeremy, this is a hot topic for you. This is something you wanted to do. So obviously this resonates you in some way. I don't think it resonated me, but I love the movies, the cartoon growing up, the Disney with Bing Crosby, as one of the voice characters and stuff like that. So not to interrupt you.
No.
I know we don't have a script, but why was this, something that you really wanted to get into?
It's one of the oldest haunting stories in the United States.
Absolutely,
And,
yeah.
Washington Irving, who wrote it, it's part of a 38 short story book. One of the other ones he wrote was Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah.
Almost all of them, though, have some supernatural. But it goes from he grew up in northern Tarrytown, which is now Sleepy Hollow.
Mm-hmm.
But he knew people from...
And where was that at?
That's New York.
New York. So there is a Sleepy Hollow in New York.
So they changed...
1640, is that right?
Well, so they changed their name around 1993, 96 from North Tarrytown to Sleepy Hollow.
Okay.
In the story, Sleepy Hollow was actually a hollow. They were in Tarrytown.
Yeah.
Where the ghost shows up is in, and there's more supernatural. We'll go tie that in later.
And the hollow is too big to be one town.
Generally a hollow is where your mountains open up and you have a ravine, and that's considered the holler.
A valley.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. So we're back into the running water thing with the paranormal and stuff like that. As
Yeah.
well.
So that's another thing I wanted to bring up is that one of the fascinating things that I read about this was that they can be dispelled by precious metals like gold and silver.
Or not being able to go across running water.
Yeah.
But not all of them are omens. There's I believe it's in one of the German ones where he just wants to race. Like he's not a bad omen. Well, you probably have stories on that too. So
Yeah.
when we hop back to you, Larry.
Well, so I was going to get into the German one here in a second. The Scottish and Welsh weren't really as more intriguing or ominous as like the Irish, German, and American. The Scottish one was just they depict him as like a chieftain that was never able to. He was a warrior that was never killed in battle, but was never able to obtain the title of chieftain. So now he haunts because he was never able to get that title.
Where's this from?
I can't remember where I got the website off the top of my
See,
head.
I liked some of the research I did on the Irish, the Doulahan, at that time frame when Christianity was coming in, a lot of saints or preachers, it was a belief that your soul was stored in your head. So if you're beheaded, it would disrupt your soul. Well, a lot of saints in that are depicted, a lot of them were beheaded back then.
Yep.
So there was a very common practice if you wanted to get back at your enemy, you would behead them. And then this is, in U.S. terms, and most people know as a revenant, is something that comes back from the grave, which...
And that's huge in German folklore with
Yeah.
the Headless Horseman, which we'll get into in a minute.
Because they're going after revenge versus just... The Irish perceive it more as like a banshee, that if you saw him, somebody in you or your family was going to die, and if you stuck around too long, it could steal your eyes.
Yeah, and they would roam around yelling a name out, and if it was your name that you heard, that kind of...
Which that goes on to another...
That's
another one of
that's
those, like you
creepy.
hear your name in the woods is, they kind of all tie together.
Yeah, if I hear my name in the woods, I'm going to be like, I ain't in the woods anymore.
That ain't my name.
Changing my name.
Yeah.
My name, Jeff.
That's a terrifying tale, just what you just said about running around saying your name. You're right. I mean, I don't get that from the Headless Horseman stories that I've watched and read as a child or a person growing up.
Yeah, it's
This is
completely different.
fantastic.
The Welsh one's kind of an interesting one to me. They call it the Finweheb Pin, which
I was not going to try that.
Yeah, it's basically headless woman, or the Keffel Heb Pin, which is the headless man, horse without a head. But there's a place called Bryn Bryn Hall in, I'm going to get this name wrong. Liam Modwoodby? I don't know how to say it. And it said that it's said to have it's being haunted by a headless horseman, which only came to end when one of the hall servants discerned a message from the horseman identifying the location of its buried body, and they dug it up.
Can we take a 5-minute break real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be right back, folks.
Welcome back to the episode.
Welcome back.
So, made my Irish coffee. Didn't have whipped cream, so I put creamer in it instead. It's actually pretty good. I opened up my son's Proper 12. I'll probably have to buy him another bottle because he's
Sure, that's not cream of some young guy.
Oh yeah, we did just have some Chinese, and Larry was gone for quite a while.
I'm fat. I like food.
That's not where I was going with it.
Oh.
So
where we
back on the
dropped
farm.
off, Larry.
So
Power hour.
Yeah. So I honestly don't remember what we were talking about besides the headless horseman.
So we're actually you had just swapped to the Welsh from the
Yeah.
Irish.
So yeah, the Gwyn he
Don't even try
whatever,
that.
yeah, where they were able to locate the body because the servants came into contact with the headless horseman, and the sighting stopped because they were able to find where he was buried and dig him up and all that kind of stuff.
did he have his head?
It didn't say.
Okay.
I mean, this was like 300-400 years ago, so
Because they were finding a lot. I mean, from what little history I looked into, they were finding a lot of male and female. We were talking about the females as well.
Yeah.
Finding couples buried together with animals, which was disgraceful. Back that meant disgraceful with their heads removed as
And
well.
the animals' heads removed.
Yep.
Correct.
And not like heads were sometimes between their legs, sometimes not even there. But all of it was like a ritual disgracing of them being buried and not properly was really what they were trying to get at.
Yeah, and I find the interesting part that in all of these iterations and cultures, they're not necessarily depicted as absolutely vengeful, spiteful, evil, malicious entities until you get to Germany, which they just go the complete opposite, which they do with a lot of stuff. You know, you got Krampus. You got the lady that, if you don't put your shoes out in front of your door, is going to come and eat your fucking kids. The
Whoa.
trash lady. Have you ever heard of the trash lady?
I haven't heard the trash lady one.
Where, yeah, she'll... so I can't remember what it was about, but to scare kids off and whatnot, and she, like, sucks them into their belly or something.
Jesus.
Most of the stuff, most of those folk tales and legends were all moral stories that
They
would
were.
keep kids in check, you know.
But there's a thin line between morals and just, like, causing lifelong trauma to your children.
Well, okay. Let me stop.
Like, eat your vegetables, or this lady's gonna turn you into trash.
I get it. We different people at different times.
Yeah.
You know, my kids said I'm old school. I raised them old school. I did not let them get tattoos. I didn't let them get their ears pierced. I said, you know, if you're going to do that, you're going to be out of my house. You know, I was very strict compared to the other kids' parents. But you do say things to your kids to keep them in line. I had my 5-year-old, my youngest son, thanks for the Proper 12 son. He's not 5 now, though. Convinced that I could legally kill him and make another one of him because he belonged to me. I go, in the limits of Raymore, if you keep acting, I mean, he was just a brutal kid, always pushing the limits of a kid. I convinced him that it was legal for me to absolutely kill. Is that great parenting?
Well, technically, that's 50% correct. Legally, you can't kill him, but legally, you can't make another one.
Yeah. And so I regret seeing it? But I had him convinced. He was absolutely terrified, and it kept him in line for at least a week.
I think there's
At least a week.
I always knock it up to the fear of God theory.
Yeah.
They got to have some sort of fear, otherwise they're going to do it. It's not, and that's where I think these came in, was like, you don't want your kids wandering off into the forest because there are animals in the forest that will eat them. But if you say, well, the wolf, which looks like a dog, that doesn't necessarily scare you as much. But if you say there's a witch out there that's going to tempt you with candy, that's a good motivation to get them to be stranger danger, because they're really strange.
And that's how kids got diabetes.
That's
Back then that's like,
they eat too much sugar.
That's was the moral of the story. Like, don't eat the candy from the witch or candy in general because you'll get sick.
Yeah, well, because they're trying to fatten you up and all that. But ideally they could get sick and die, because if you got that type 2 diabetes back then would kill you.
Well,
almost everything killed you.
Funny to mention that there was a movie called Hansel and Gretel with Jeremy Renner.
Fantastic. I loved every bit of it.
And that's what happened to him. He had to take insulin shots back in the 1600s because he ate so much witch candy.
Yep.
He got diabetes.
Hey, just quick note. My son is alive. He's 28. He's doing really well. I'm very proud of him.
Watch your ass.
He turned out to be a hell of a young man.
So let's go ahead and get into the German folklore.
Brutal.
Revenants, basically. Not the Leonardo DiCaprio bear mutilation movie. We're talking about entities that...
But that was based on a true story as well, though.
Yeah, it was an awesome movie.
Glass was
that was a guy. That was a man. That guy was a man.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. All right, go ahead.
It was a great movie, by the way. But yeah, they're entities that think they've been wronged, even if they haven't, or have, during life, that come back for revenge from the grave. And there's tons of stories about...
Well, we're finding historical records of these burials and all that. So, I mean, it was at that point in time, they were really worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, they were going to the extent of, like, burying people's body parts separately from one another so that they couldn't reform and come back.
Weighing them down
with stones so they couldn't lift their arms. And
bricks in the jaw.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of weird stuff that they're
horrible stuff.
That's crazy.
And the theory behind what a revenant was that they were supposed to come back and wander the earth
seeking justice
to seek justice, or atone for, like, they could have been created because of the sins they created, so they were trying to atone for their sins by doing good deeds and all that kind of stuff. So they weren't necessarily all evil, but if you saw a dead, bloated, homeless, or dead person walking around without a head, you're not going to think, oh, that's a good guy.
Yeah.
Right there, let me go make friends with Philip.
Well, I mean, there's a story of the one that, like, one of them was just a headless rider that wanted to race.
Yeah.
And he disappeared after he had one person race him because everybody else was too scared to race a undead man. So, I mean, they're out of
is this a story?
No, it's a German folklore, and that's what was kind of weird about the German folklore. Like, usually they're way worse than everybody else, and on the headless riders and that, it's a lot more mellow. Like, they have a whole spectrum of them, but not all of them are automatically doom and gloom. And
so there was a gentleman named Augustin Calmet who, back in the 1700s, because he was fascinated with this, did extensive research on revenants, and he wrote, I'm gonna butcher this name of this book. It was called Traité sur les apparitions des esprits et sur les vampires ou les revenants de Hongrie de Moravie. And he basically said that in relation to the times that he was in, that he compared the ideas of what the revenants and vampires and all that kind of stuff
they're
were.
very similar on where they split. Is the language change was like one's a revenant, another one's a vampire, and then you get into the folklore in the area.
And he associated them with the Greek and Egyptian ancients and notes on old belief and magic, they could not only cause death, but could also invoke the souls of the deceased, which comes into the vampire, where they can create vampires of their own and all that kind of stuff. So I found that kind of interesting.
I have a question. It's kind of on the subject, but those who have played D&D,
you know what a revenant is?
Is this the same kind of revenant that we're talking about?
That's what it's based off of.
Is that right?
Almost all D&D, when you get into the ghosts and that, they're based off of folklore and that. But yeah, so revenant, spirits come back to gain revenges. It's mutated over the years, and the original revenant was the derivative was to be revived, and that's where the vampire coming back to life, and then revenant, and as people grow and languages slightly change, that's where they've kind of split off.
Yeah,
something not to mess with though.
And they went by they went by multiple names in German folklore. I mean, you had the Howie Dweller, you had Ghost, Phantom, but the most interesting one in D&D, I'm sure you're going to notice this term, Dragoor. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's kind of.
So yeah, they went by a lot of terms.
They are hard to beat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. You
Children my old geek days, right?
And they even go as far as not just adults, but in Swedish folklore, they were called dead child beings, which astonishes me. Like, you think a child's so evil and you behead it,
or threaten.
Well, if it comes back,
or threaten to kill it.
No, I mean when it's dead.
Oh,
you
okay.
behead it. Like, what the fuck did that kid do? That, I mean, are we talking like Red Rum Kid, or the twins from The Shining type shit, or
it's hard to say.
Or Pippi Longstockings, who did no one any harm? It just baffles my mind. Like,
so that you're saying that actually happened?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
part of the folklore. Yeah.
It's part of the folklore. Yeah.
That there was kids.
But is there any significance where they found that, or they can date that happened? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
You know me, always calling something out. So
I don't know. I mean, they're
some people just hate kids.
Some do what?
Just hate kids.
Or bake them.
Yeah. Which is.
I'm not going to mention what I thought.
Yeah, don't.
I mean,
a
lot of people now bake their kids, but that's not.
Or get baked with their kids.
Yeah, that's.
I know what you meant. Sorry. I don't mean to screw your podcast up, guys. I'm just really dumb on this subject. Not that I'm smart on any subject, but you know what I'm saying.
So, the next thing that I wanted to bring to you goes back to that Sleepy Hollow movie with Johnny Depp. I read a little. God damn, I can't.
Short story.
No, clip, but like a
news clipping.
No,
we can edit this. Don't worry about
it. But it was written by William Newburgh, and he lived in the 1100s, and it reminded me a lot of that Sleepy Hollow. He wrote that they were a warning of posterity, and so he wrote, "Were I to write down all the instances of this kind which I have ascertained to have befallen in our times, the undertaking would be beyond measure laborious and troublesome. It would not be easy to believe that the corpses of the dead should sally, I know not by what agency, from their graves, and should wander about to the terror or destruction of the living, and again return to their tomb, which of its own accord spontaneously opened to receive them. Did not frequent examples occurring in our own times suffice to establish this fact, to the truth of which there is abundant testimony." So it reminded me of that a couple scenes in the Sleepy Hollow movie where it came out from within and under the tree on its horse, and then it went back down, and that's how the lady at the end died, where she got sucked into the tree. I always thought that was weird when I watched that movie before, but now
you know where that.
Now I know where that comes from, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Like,
that it's weird?
No. Like, what are the implications of why would it go back to its tomb if it was free to wander and do its bidding?
Well, so under most of the folklore, Well, no,
Shut up.
most of the folklores when it comes to the Headless Horseman and that they're free to roam the night, and as soon as dawn breaks, they have to go back, or they run a risk of being destroyed. And we'll get into even the Sleepy Hollow version has ties to that.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
But what a horrible graphic scene that was in the movie.
God, it was
was
disgusting.
that? I mean, was that not just horrific?
Yeah.
I mean, for what it was. I mean, and then here you're reading this, and it just brings back that scene to me.
Yeah, it does. It was. Yeah, you like see the muscles and everything forming on the horse.
Yes,
it was brutal. So yeah, that's basically the German folklore lineage of the Headless Horseman.
But let me ask you, wasn't a lot of that based upon, and you guys know about this, but off those certain warriors? I forget what the name for the
Hessians.
Yeah, that'll come up in
Hessians.
American.
Yeah.
Isn't that where we came? That's where we made him or put him up, just like the Johnny Depp one. I mean, he was
a Hessian. Even the TV series, the Sleepy Hollow, was
fantastic series.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed
great
that.
actor. Whatever happened to him, by the way?
I don't know whatever happened to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a good, and that was strongly based off of the short story by Washington Irving. They went as far as the Hessian being beheaded, but
Yeah, so why don't we get into the American folklore?
Well, the only thing I really know about the American, besides the story, which you're right, it's one of the oldest ghost tales ever in our country, horror stories, if you will, whatever. That the guy lost his head because, from my understanding, Washington just got his butt handed to him by the British around Long Island area. So on his retreat, he set up some cannons to protect their backside, and he had a guy monitor some cannons. Only one cannonball was shot and took off the head of a Hessian.
yeah, which was known for taking care of the cannons on their side. Was
right.
A mercenary,
and they were known for filing down their teeth to instill fear.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No, see, I had no idea.
Yeah.
God, that's horrible. I mean, my God,
You
the mindset of that.
Yeah, you want to hear the history?
Absolutely. Let's hear this. If I jumped ahead, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. So there was a battle during 1776 called the Battle of White Plains, and the country south of the Bronx River was abandoned by the colonial or Continental Army and occupied by the British. The Americans fortified north of Peekskill, leaving Westchester County scorched and desolated into a no man's land. Besides the Loyalist Rangers and British infantry, they were called Hessian Jaegers, J-A double
hunters. German hunters, Jaeger.
Renowned. Then they were renowned sharpshooters and horsemen, and they were the raiders who skirmished with the patrol armies. They would hide in the forests and like pick people off. So that's where that whole Hessian thing comes from. It's terrifying. They were like beasts, like mountain country men with guns, basically.
They were trained German soldiers, because at the time Germany was not just one country; it was a whole bunch of small countries, and one of them was Hessian. And the Hessian soldiers were hired. Basically, the British hired them to fight the fight, which actually had a lot of it affected the Americans a lot, because there were a lot of German ancestors in the colony. So when they saw the Hessians come over, because they took it as British didn't think we were worth the time to fight with their own army, they had the Hessians. And the Hessians were well known for being very good at what they did, sharpshooting, hand-to-hand. They were very fearsome. One thing that is brought up about the Battle of White Plains, and why it ties back into why it's a Halloween story, is the battle actually happened on October 28th, 1776. There is written recordings from, I believe it was either a general or a major, talking about the Hessian being decapitated by a single cannonball.
Right.
So, I mean, it is a historical, that event happened. I mean, because a lot of people, if you get a chance to look into Washington Irving, him and his short stories, I mean, he's the father of American short tales in the United States. Yeah. He was Mark Twain before Mark Twain was even around. he took what he knew from his growing up and transported. But what's funny is these stories weren't written in the U.S.
No, they weren't.
They're written in was it Birmingham, England?
Yeah.
He had writer's block in Terrytown, where he grew up as a young kid, and didn't realize that at that moment in time in the U.S.
I think he hears a Headless Horseman.
Yeah.
I apologize for that, guys. I'm so sorry. My bulldog, when he gets lonely, he does that. I'm so sorry.
I do
all
it
good.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't lick anything.
Well, guys, and gosh, you guys sound really invested in this. I wish I knew this history. I love history. That's phenomenal and that's fascinating.
It is.
So these guys were like special forces guys.
They were the
just highly,
hired. Yeah.
the
You
highly
hired
trained.
them if you wanted something to get done. They were that notorious in that time frame. That
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kind of like a more modern version of the Knights Templars, is like the best warriors out
Yep.
there at that time,
The
skilled.
Mercenaries.
Spartans.
yeah, that's.
And they're so.
Were they all mercenaries? Is that right?
No, so technically they weren't. So mercenary gets brought up because you paid for
Paid for their service.
their services, but that went to the country. They were literally just an army that the king of the area would get money and then send his people out. They were there to fight because that's what they were told to do. Very Spartanish. They were very militia. They knew what they were doing, and they were feared.
Yep.
And like I said, They were the group that people didn't want. Well, and a lot of people don't realize when Washington crossed the Delaware, we always hear us to kill the English. No, it was actually a Hessian group that they went over and murked on Christmas Day because they didn't want him going anywhere else.
And they were
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
they were badasses, but can you imagine back in 1700 when everybody was like 4 or 5 foot tall? You see this giant 6 foot something
6'2"
redheaded
redhead.
guy on a boat with wooden teeth coming. I'm gonna get you, motherfucker.
Well, yeah,
I'd be like,
but he made his guys go, and these guys, they didn't have boots; they had their feet wrapped with claws.
Yeah.
They were on the way of dying out. This was
Oh,
their
no,
last. This was
they
their
lost
last
over a quarter in Valley Forge from starvation and diseases while they're trying to get everybody. They literally decided that they needed to go attack because they were losing too many people trying to bed down for the winter because they didn't have enough resources. So they moved to attack.
and
unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable.
But this is the time frame of, like you said, George Washington had just been routed by the Hessian forces. And then the Battle of White Plains happened. Like I said, it was October 28th, 1776. This is... And to pull into the story, Brom Bones, who's mentioned in this tale, was a Revolutionary War person. And he actually has tiebacks to real people, to a blacksmith that was Brom, who helped fight off the Hessians because they burned down the Van Winkles or the
Van Tassels.
Van Tassel's farmland, which also goes into another weird story about a baby and all that. And a
And
Hessian
don't they think
soldier.
these two guys were combined?
Yeah, they think there's two different blacksmiths. There's the one that was the war veteran hero, who was very strong and all that. The second one was also a blacksmith, but he was known for pranks. He played pranks on a teacher.
Right. That would not ask this girl to marry him because he was too nervous. And finally, when he got, and I don't want to interrupt you.
No.
So he was actually being chased. The teacher was being chased by this ghostly ghoul in white sheets from her place or whatever. And he got hit or smashed with something, which I think was a pumpkin, and knocked him off the horse. And the teacher goes, "I get it. I'll ask her to marry me." It's to something to that effect, right? I'm not as versed on this as you are, but what little research I've done.
Well, and it's also said that after the skirmish that happened, that the Van Tassels found and dug up a buried body that was headless, and they took it and buried
Gave
it
it a
somewhere
proper
else.
burial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
At a church, I believe.
think the old
It's
Dutch
the old,
burying ground.
it's
At
the
the
old Dutch church. So
Which you can see from the bridge that you're supposed to be crossing, right?
Well, and where the Hessian was beheaded is only 8 miles from where North Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow is. And the story is the Hessians came in and burned down the Van Tassel's farmland. And at one point, they had lost a child. They couldn't find the child. Well, the child was swaddled and found in the barn that wasn't burned.
That's right.
And the story is that it was a Hessian soldier that saved the child.
Right. And then when they found the body,
they didn't know if it was the same Hessian or not. To be safe, they gave him burial rights and put him into the old
they
Dutch,
wanted to give him a proper burial. Yeah. What a great story.
Yeah, no, it really is.
And I can see now why you wanted to do this, because to me, I'm like, it's a hint, it's a hotel, but when we start talking about it,
but it's also the Headless Horseman's not the only spirit in that story. Do you know about the other?
No.
So, in the story, when Ichabod Crane hits the tree, which the tree was known as the haunted location, was a Major Andre's tree, was known to be haunted by Major John Andre, which Andre was actually hounding. What?
A giant?
No, unfortunately not. He was known as a traitor because his comrade was Benedict Arnold. He was captured in Tarrytown.
Oh, shit.
Found out that he had the paperwork on him talking about Benedict Arnold and what they were doing. They were feeding information to the English. And he was hung in that tree. It's in the story that it's his spirit that used to haunt that tree, so that area was known as being haunted.
Interesting.
So when he comes and hits the tree, Ichabod was very superstitious, so he's on edge. And that is when he sees a rider, but because they're around trees and not in an open area, he couldn't tell that the rider was missing a head.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Irving really pulled a bunch of information from the time frame in the area and kind of wove all this together.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And you as a writer, right?
You
gotta be
fabulous.
floored.
So it even goes further. So by this comes out, we should already have the Salem Witch Trial episode out. So one of the things that Ichabod Crane's favorite author was Cotton Mathers. The book was a book history of New England's witchcraft. Now, Cotton Mathers was an actual person. Yeah. He was a Protestant preacher, minister, who did write multiple books about witchcraft and all that, but there wasn't one that was actually named, the history of. But where he gets tied into, him being Ichabod Crane's favorite author, he helped found Yale. He was into hybridizing plants. Yeah. Early into vaccinations, they called it inoculation back then.
Yeah, he's huge in the scientific world.
Yes.
Cotton Mathers.
But he's really known for, he was brought in on the Salem witch trials hoping that he would bring some structure to it.
Some common sense.
And he did not. He totally said this is the right thing to do. Watch the hangings, and that is what he's mostly known for, is not quelling. Because they thought with him being a minister, he would put his, because he was very scientific, but that's how Irving pulled him in. And I was like, holy cow!
Do you think? And that makes sense because in the movie, the stepmom's a witch. Remember, she was the one conjuring.
Oh yeah.
It was enough of a history for Irving to bring him in and make him be part of that, because Salem's not that far from.
No, it's not.
I mean, when you get into New England, you're talking
100 miles.
less than 100 miles. Well, where the guy was lost his head was 8 from Sleepy Hollow.
So I know back in the day.
Are you talking about Salem?
I know back in the day, people of an educated, knowledgeable mind and that were interested in science and reason and all that kind of stuff, kind of had a dark side to them too.
Usually they were outcast by the church because you're going against.
Do you think he may have done that because he was interested in seeing what would happen to like a human if they underwent these circumstances?
I don't know.
Research type stuff.
Why he went along with the Salem?
I had him.
Why he went along with the Salem witch trials and
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say why he would have picked that, because at the time, had he not been involved in the Salem witch trials, everybody would know his name. I mean, he was that influential at that time for medicine and science that he would have been. Like I said, he helped found Yale, but unless you're in the medical or realm, most people don't realize that. And I'll be honest, I didn't know until I started doing research, but
I didn't know that either.
I thought it was very interesting that Irving kept him in there and put him as a prominent witchcraft, because it was trying to build Ichabod being very superstitious. Even though he's a teacher, he believed in the superstition and helped, make his mind more open to seeing stuff like that. I thought it was very, very interesting.
It's very ingenious.
Yes.
It's kind of like a plot twist type of thing.
Well, and him grabbing people that he, from his growing up in the town, and like the Van Tassels are real. Katrina is they think is probably based off of one of it was like a niece that was young in her mid to late 20s. Compared to there is a Katharina,
but they don't believe it was on her.
No.
It was like her niece or something like that.
Her niece, yeah.
Because she was full of
Same with Brom
Yeah.
Bones being agglomeration of two different
Between the two
blacksmiths.
different guys, right?
And then the teacher that learned got scared by one of the blacksmiths is their thought of Ichabod is where he got the idea of that teacher.
Yep.
But keep in mind, he was across the ocean in England when he started writing these down. So that's what he pulled it all from memory. So, and as more people research it and get into it, like he probably knew about the Dualhan because he had friends that were Scottish and Irish and all that. But
and Revenant.
And Revenants.
Seeking revenge. But
there's also an alternate theory that there was a legend of. So you had the ghost of John Audrey being hung.
Yes.
Is known as that was known, and there's a possibility that because the Headless Horseman was a real tale of a Hessian being beheaded, that these could be actual stories that people were talking about when he was growing up.
That he just recollected
and put into the story.
Interesting. Well, why don't we take a quick pee-pee and poo-poo break?
A bio break?
A bio break.
Shake the dew up a lily.
Come back and
drop some kids off the pool.
Drop the kids off the pool.
I don't be doing any of that.
Well, then you can just sit there. Shit.
I'll sit here and
I'm just saying, if you're just holding it,
or just make another Irish whiskey or coffee.
Holy cow!
I know.
I did not realize you just drank all that.
I did, but you know what?
It wasn't that much.
There really wasn't that much alcohol in it. So
hardly.
Yeah. Maybe there was like a quarter of a shot in it.
I'm not doing what I did last podcast, guys.
But when
3 days.
When we
3
get back,
days. 3-day hangover. No.
When we get back, I'd like to go into the English folklore and talking about like Arthurian legend and that kind of stuff.
The Green Knight.
Off the Green Knight theory.
So we'll be right back.
Sir Gawain was my dude, man.
Yeah.